Let's begin. So I would like to welcome everyone today to our Out to Lunch with the Cantors. And I really hope you have something really good to eat while we're talking to our very, very special guest today. I would like to welcome my friend and colleague, David Rosen from the congregation from Temple Holy Blossom, and all our friends from the Toronto Jewish community, um, and we why are we doing this program? We spoke a little bit about this at our last session, and the reality is that people see us in the synagogue running programs, leading services, and being up there with a tallis and singing with or without the choir. But people know very little about our lives, our passions, our hobbies, um, about the fact that we actually can tell a joke. We have actually humor, some of us, maybe except me, um, and um, and that we are bringing forward to our community much more that people may just think about. So we have a very, very special guest today, a Cantor's Cantor, a teacher, a mentor of the next generation of Cantors. And David, why don't you introduce Jackie for everyone?
Sure. It is really a treat, and one of the bonuses, of course, of this virtual world is that we can bring in such incredible people in an instant, and you can be with them and talk to them and hear them as well, which you'll get a chance to do. Um, Cantor Jackie Mendelson, as Tibor said, is truly a Chazan's Chazan. He is the Cantor's Cantor. And this will come up in our conversation with him over the next hour, but a true lover and preserver of the art of cantorial music and chazanut and nusach. He was my teacher in cantorial school, along with so many other people who have gone through Hebrew Union College and the Jewish Theological Seminary. And Jackie was the cantor for how many years at Temple Israel, Jackie?
28.
28 years as the cantor of Temple Israel, which was down the street from where I was in White Plains at Kolami. And I've just come to love him over the years and just always watch with awe what he brings to our profession, what he brings to the Jewish community. And so it's really, really a pleasure to have him with us here today, Cantor Jackie Mendel.
Thank you.
So Jackie, first question.
Go ahead.
Let's I mean, and we have many directions we can take things today, but just maybe you can give everybody just a glimpse of where you grew up and the environment that you grew up in, and how some of that began to shape who you are today and who you were throughout the years. If you could give us a little synopsis.
I was born in Borough Park, Brooklyn, which became the Mecca. Those who cantors know that word. The Mecca. Not that word, the Mecca. What I'm doing is I'm remembering my great teacher, Moshe Genshoff. Whenever he would say like a $10 word, he would pause and he would say, very few cantors know that word. And then he would continue. So I'm remembering him by doing that shtick. But it seems as though all the great chazanim from Poland emigrated to America, and the really great ones came to Borough Park of Brooklyn. They came to Brooklyn, and the super great ones landed in Borough Park. Um, I actually heard Ber Lachagi when I was a child. We had a sukkah. We lived in an apartment building, but there was a courtyard, and we lived on the ground floor, and they allowed us to have a sukkah. And interesting, there was a window right next to where the mailboxes were. There was a window, and the window would go right into our sukkah. So my mother would just walk down the hall with the food and pass it into the window, and we'd go into the sukkah. And Chagi was a friend of the family, and I was legend has it I was 4 or 5 years old, and when Chazanim came to our sukkah, it was incumbent upon them to sing. They all had to sing, and so I had to sing too, even though I was 4 or 5. And I sang a little something for him. I sang Vimale. Vimale is it comes from the short of Harachamim prayer when you take out the Torah. Avarachamim hu yirachem amamusim yizkor berite tanim yatzil nafshotenu min hashaot haraot v'yigar b'yetzer hara min hanasuim, and on and on. And then it says v'male mishalotenu b'midat tova yeshua v'rachamim. May whatever we ask be granted to us with help and with mercy. So this was taken, this line, Vimale, was taken out of context, and it was sung at Jewish weddings by a boy. And the boy would be dressed up in a cantor's outfit, a little white gown with a little mitre on his head and a talit. And the boy would walk down the aisle singing Vimale. And it went something like this. Vimale mishalosenu b'midat tova b'midat tova Yeshua v'rachamim b'midat tova b'midat tova. And then the boy would raise his hands in a Kohanic gesture to the bride and the groom. Everything we ask for them should be granted. But during this whole time, he's walking down the aisle, and he gets to the chuppah, Yeshua. Now the last word is rachamim, but the kid would take breaths in the middle. And then walk back down the aisle, change into a suit, and later on he would sing I Love You Truly in the ceremony, which is an old song from the 30s and 40s. I love you truly, truly, dear. Life with its sorrows, life with its cheers, fades unto dream when I feel you are near. For I love you truly, truly, dear. And for this, I would get $5 and all I could eat at the smorgasbord. And so I sang Vimale for the great Ber Lachagi. And he said to my mother, Zol wachsen a chazen. He said, I'll grow to be a chazen. So that was my mother's, that kept her, she was so happy. That the real reason I'm a chazen is that because of my mother. My parents were huge fans of Chazanut. One Chazan in particular, Mordechai Hirschman. See, our shul was Temple Bethel, where Hirschman davened, where they built the shul for Hirschman. They had a medium-sized shul, 500 seats, and they engaged Hirschman. He came over from Warsaw, and they engaged Hirschman to be the Chazan. And the shul was filled, plus there were 1,000 people outside listening from the windows. And finally, they had no choice. They built a shul for Hirschman with 2,000 seats. And huge balcony, Moorish architecture, the most gorgeous shul you could imagine. Dome with a gorgeous Jewish star lit up by light bulbs above, choir loft, acoustics like you wouldn't believe. And that's where Hirschman davened until he retired, and then came Ber Lachagi, and a few in between not so famous, and then eventually came Moshe Chazovitsky, who was my chazan, and I sang in his choir. And so Temple Bethel at Borough Park was the to this day it still is. Ben Zion Miller is the chazan there now. They merged with Young Israel, which is funny to me because when I was a kid, Young Israel was way to the right of Bethel. Bethel was a modern Orthodox congregation. The men and women did not sit together. There was a balcony. Um, but Young Israel was very, very frum. And the shuls merged, and now it's Young Israel Bethel. And Benzi still davens with a choir, and he still can cut it at age 75. He still can do it with his big long white beard. So I always tell him I'm the first Benzi, because my middle name is Ben Sion, Yaakov Ben Sion Mendelssohn HaKohen, and he's Ben Sion Miller. So I said I'm the first Benzi. So I like to digress a lot. So so I was into Chazanis as a child, and it wasn't hard because Chazanis was in the air in Borough Park. Everywhere you go, you'd hear Chazanis. The cab driver sang it. The bus driver sang it. We had a kosher delicatessen, and the waiter would sing Quarton as he's serving the food. He'd sing Quarton. He'd go, Morandi Vishmaya, I forgot the words. Yeah, whatever the words are, and he go, would you like a corned beef on club? French fries on the side. Morandi Vishmaya. Lean. And that's it. And the radio was playing all the time station WEVD. WEVD advertised itself as the station that speaks your language, that language being Yiddish. It was the Yiddish station, and they had chazanim all day long. Chazanim had their own shows. They had later on, Moshe Genshoff became my Rebbe, and they called him the Chazan's Chazan, and he didn't like it. He was PO'd when he heard Chazan's Chazan. He said, never mind, what do you mean Chazan's Chazan? I'm the people's Chazan. But I don't mind. You want to call me the Chazan's Chazan, that's fine. As long as you send a check. And so I really was into, but my mother was the one. She was insane for Chazanis. I'll never forget. Dad went to shul early, Shabbos morning. I was just a little guy. And my mother starts screaming, Jackie, come in. You got to hook my bra. I don't want to miss Shacharis. I don't want to miss Kedusha. Zip up my dress. She was nuts. She'd walk 5 miles to hear a chazan in high heels. Go ahead, ask me a question.
Benny, why did I call you Benny? Jackie, in your home, so aside from your mother, who obviously was a huge lover of Chazanut, your siblings, tell us how Chazanut resonated in your household as well, and how that played out over the years.
Yeah, well, I was the baby, and the eldest was 18 when I was born. My sister Shirley, rest in peace, and then my sister Betty was 16, and my brother Saul, Zachrenu Livracha, was 13 when I was born. And then so he stayed in the house till he was about 20, and then he moved out, and then I was like an only child after that because both sisters were married. But I do remember when the entire family would be together for Shabbos meals, and we had Zmiris that were written by my Zayda, my father's father, who was a great Meshorer, and he was a Rav, he was a Lubavitcher rabbi, but he had a gorgeous, gorgeous voice, and he had a head for music. He didn't read music or write music, but in his head he composed. Menucha v'simcha or la Yehudim, Yom Shabbos and Yom Machmadim, Yom Machmadim. Oy menucha v'simcha or la Yehudim, Yom Shabbos and Yom Machmadim, Shem v'zavachav, Heima miyidim, Betty, take the next verse. Shirley, next voice. Tucky. Tucky was my brother's nickname. It was Solomon. And we all had to sing. We all, sang the Zmiris. And in these Zmiris, interestingly enough, was the DNA of Chazonis. You could hear Chazonis within these Zmiris. Some of them were in Fregish. Some of them were in Mogei Navos. Some of them were in the Valachol, which, Misha Berach mode, Ukrainian Dorian. And so just learning those miras, I was halfway to becoming a chazan already. And, when I was like 6 years old, I knew all my chazanas moves. So it was permeated in the house. And they loved Hirschman. My father was a kind of a mild-mannered guy. Unless you said something bad about Hirschman, then he'd actually punch you in the nose. If like say he was in a bar getting a drink and someone said, because they didn't talk about Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays and Duke Snyder, who's the best center fielder in New York. They talked about who's the best chazan in New York. Is it David Kosovitsky? Is it Moshe Kosovitsky? Is it Beryl Lachai? Who's the best chazan? And then if someone would say something bad about Hirschman, my father gave him a shmais and punim. And, they were serious about their chazanis in those days. It was, and I saw these guys as a kid. They were rock stars. They'd wear these top hats and capes, and they'd walk around with canes. People be following them, serving them, giving them anything they wanted. When those Kusavitsky boys, they would come into our deli. They never paid. My father would, treated them like royalty. David would walk in, and the Kusavitskys really destroyed Chazonis because there were four brothers, and they had Corinthian leather in their throats, and they had high notes that no one ever had before. And so Chazonis became, instead of an art form, it became more of a gymnastics type of a thing, where people only wanted to see. The Kozovitskys were good Chazonim. Without the high notes, they were good Chazonim. But when the new generation heard those high notes, that's what they wanted to imitate. They wanted to imitate the high notes. And then and Chazonis suffered. And we had no more pinchiks and no more quartans. We only had high notes, and with bad chazonis, because these people, all they wanted to do is imitate Kozovitsky.
Jackie, can you say you alluded to Moshe Ganchoff being your Rebbe, and I want to share in a moment a clip of you singing his Ochila La'el. But before I do, can you just say a little bit about your relationship with Moshe Ganchoff and a little bit about who he was and how he mentored you?
Well, Ganchoff was the last of the great Eastern European Chazanim. Actually, he came over when he was 6 years old from Russia, and he lived in Toledo and played shortstop on his little league team. But he loved baseball, tremendous baseball. Yankee fan, Don Mattingly. He called him Mettingly. And they had a pitcher. I would have a lesson with Genshoff. They had a pitcher named Messina, Mike Messina. And she said, "Hey, Jackie, come over here. Mashiach is pitching. Mashiach." But anyway, Genshoff, he was the synthesis of all the great Chazanim. Gorgeous tenor voice, sang an extremely high tessitura. He didn't have the high notes per se. I mean, he'd go up to B flat, B natural, even C if he had to, but not like Kozovitsky, where Kozovitsky would sing a high C, take a nap, still be singing it, wake up, still be singing it, and have lunch, still be singing it. And, where Ganchoff was more of a normal guy. You know what Ganchoff said to Moshe Kozovitsky one day? They did a concert together. And Ganchoff looks at Moshe and he says, "Hey, Kusi," he called him. "Hey, Kusi, I'd like to see what you could do if you had my voice." So this Ganchoff, he was a character, big character. He was mad at the world. because his art form was dying, and there were no more Pinchicks coming up, and he hung out with these guys, and he was mad at the Kouzovitsky brothers for killing the art form, the Kunst, and he was a horrible teacher, terrible pedagogue. So the trick was get him to demonstrate, goose him somehow, get him. Moshe, could sing that? Can you sing that phrase? And I had a little reel-to-reel Norelco. That's before cassettes were invented. A little reel-to-reel Norelco, and I tape him, and I get him and go home and practice and practice, and that's how I learned from him. So in that way, he was fantastic, because it was so authentic. His singing was, his chazanas was so authentic. You thought you were in Europe, back in the 20s when you heard him sing. And I became like an uncle, even a father's son type of deal. He lived in Brighton Beach, Bam Yam, by the water, near Coney Island, right by the ocean. And when I graduated school, I had him in classes, at HUC. By the way, I'm a graduate of HUC, and I was expected to go to JTS because I came from an Orthodox family. But it was my brother who was on the faculty of JTS said, no, you got to go to HUC because that's where the great Chazanim are to teach. Israel Alter, Larry Avery, Moshe Genshoff, and or the great Avram Shapiro. That's another thing. Go on YouTube, check out Abraham Shapiro. They called him the Little Caruso. He sang in the Met Chorus as a kid, and Caruso he let the kid hang around with him, and he dubbed him the Little Caruso. Tremendous singer, and a great chazan. So Genshoff, it was a world. When I had a lesson with Genshoff, it started at noon and it ended. We went out to dinner. All together. His wife Peggy, his suffering wife Peggy, but because he was such a tough guy. He was always worried about his voice, even when he was 90 years old. He said, Peggy, he talked like that, Peggy, hey Jackie, my wife Peggy, she drives, she drives like a man. She drives like a man. Peggy, take me to Grapshite. Grapshite is a throat doctor. All the singers used to go there. Take me to Grapshite. He said, Moshe, you're sick? No, I want to see my chords. I want to see my chords. So Grapshite looks at his chords and he says, they look good. He was Viennese. Genshoff, they look good. He wasn't satisfied. He came back to the ground. Peggy, take me to Reckford. Another throat doctor from Vienna. Reckford says, your chords look excellent. He wasn't happy. So he said, Peggy, take me to Gould. Now Gould was Jewish, but he was Americanized. And he was very, very famous. I mean, I'll never forget, I went to Gould once, and in the waiting room was Averell Harriman, the governor of New York, was there. And, people like that, they all, opera, politicians, they all went to Gould. And Gould was a politician, and he knew what Genshoff needed to hear. So he looked at his chords, he says, Genshoff, your chords look like the tush of a baby, of a little baby. They're soft and beautiful. And then he came back to Peggy and says, take me home, Peggy. He heard what he needed to hear. Freda! That's Freda Merle Rackers and Mendelssohn. Show your face.
The great cantor Freda Mendelssohn.
Hi, Freda.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
I canceled it last night. Tell them.
Got it.
Do we want to? I want to play this clip, Jackie, of you singing the Ochila Le'el. Do you want to just say a quick something about
this is Ochila Le'el by Moshe, and it was harmonized originally for male choir by an HUC guy. I'm trying to think of his name. Howard Bender. Howard Bender. He started off as a baritone. He sang. He had a lot of good jobs, and he became a tenor, and then he became some sort of a an operatic agent, so had a nice career. A good musician, loved chazanas, was a good chazan himself, and he said it. So in this particular concert, it was in honor of Moshe Genshov. It was his 85th birthday. The concert was called the Legendary Moshe Genshov, and it was held in Merkin Hall on West 67th Street in Manhattan. And they had a bunch of chazanim, Alberto Mizrahi and Israel Goldstein, and Richard Dick Botten, the great baritone, and Mati Lazar and the Zamia Chorale. And Mati's conducting, Joyce Rosenzweig at the piano, but I don't think you see her. I don't think she even plays. This particular piece is a cappella. So here we go. Jackie singing Ochil Elohel.
All right, let's get it up. If there's an issue with the sound, please type it in the chat so we can make sure everybody can hear.
All right.
And let's get it going here.
Look at me.
Oops. What happened?
We're getting it. We're getting it. Look how thin and gorgeous. Oh, that's a different piece. That's a different piece we're talking. That's
Is that the Lechil El?
Oh no, that's years. I was 50 years old. I'm very young. Okay, I'll find it. Wait.
Hang on.
Cantor Jackie Mendelson. It's the one of the two, maybe the one on the bottom right.
Oh, the bottom right. I see. They're labeled. I understand now. Okay.
By correction, the Ochila La'el is arranged by Howard Bender.
Look at me, I'm a bar mitzvah boy. Yeah,
Spectacular.
I love that piece. What a piece.
Ah, beautiful.
That's known as a drop. Fanav.
The nice thing about this piece is how beautifully is combined the nusach with a little bit of cantorial runs in it. And but nusach is kept to maximum in it.
It's the Nusach of Ochila Loel.
Yeah,
You could almost call it a Missinai tune.
yeah.
This tune.
So what do you think about nusach, Jackie? Because yeah, I mean, looking at other chazanim today, that they are tapping into all kinds of music in order to entertain rather than pray.
Well,
What's your feeling about this?
well, I was a tapper myself. You know, when the revolution came, let's say starting with Debbie Friedman, I paid attention. And I would sing a piece here and there. I actually befriended her. And when I was the president of the Cantors Assembly in the 80s, I invited her to the Concord Hotel. So the conservative, she was only known in reform circles, and so that the conservative movement should meet her. And it was actually a very successful meeting. And I would, talk to her about Nusach. She was very interested in it, and she wanted to learn, and we would work. But not just her music. I would, if you look at Meir Finkelstein's music, it's not Nusachdik. It's more like American cinematic, movie music. Beautiful, beautiful movie music. But it's very. The, what I did was I was clever about it. I'd be in the Nusach, 7 pieces in a row, and then all of a sudden I do a Meir Finkelstein, and then come out of it back to the Nusach. But in order to do that, you have to be musically aware, musically clever. You have to make a good modulation so you're not surprising them and making them feel that you're going into outer space or something. There has to be a modulation that makes sense, and then another modulation to bring them back into the Nusach. And that's how it's done. And why shouldn't we use American sounding Nusach? The Nusach has always reflected the musical tastes of the country in which we were. Well, going back to the Italian Renaissance, where that's how the Jewish music sounded, with Salomone Rossi, and 19th century uh, Vienna and Berlin and Lewandowski and Sulzer. It sounded like Mendelssohn with 2 S's and an H. My grandfather was the son of Mendel, so he was running away from the Russians, so he became Mendelssohn. So, so, I'm all for it, but you got to. But my belief is that Nusach should be the host, and the modern sounds should be the guest that is invited in by the host. After all, Nusach isn't a fad, ladies and gentlemen. It's been around for 2,000 years. I mean, this has been, in the Middle Ages, we had Sinai tunes in the 12th century. I mean, Olenu L'Shabeach, the great Olenu, and other Sinai tunes. What are we going to do? Abandon it? We're going to throw it out the window, flush it down the toilet? The only music that the victims of the Holocaust knew? Just throw it away? Sorry, Charlie, not on my watch. And you've got to be, it's and within the Nusach, it's you can create all kinds of songs, whether they're sad, whether they're happy, whether they're reflective. You could stay in the nusach and have a ball and do all kinds of different motifs. But to bring in an American sound is, I think, is wonderful. But to do it with musicality and purpose and make it, you know, understanding. Look, I don't know. I got a tuning fork. No cantor goes anywhere without a tuning fork. Ready? Here's your aim. Le do va do, le do va do, le do va do, nagid god lecha. Has nothing to do with nusach. Ulenetzach nitzachim, ulenetzach nitzach. Second ending. Kedushat echonah. V'shivachacha that was Moshe Kosovitsky's gesture. And my mother, when she wanted me to give out, she'd go like this in the congregation. I knew I better sing what she likes or else, And then, and I bring back, at the end, I said, anyway, take my word for it, but I bring back the end of the Finkelstein, and then I end again in Nusach. So what did I do in the middle in the Vishiv Chacha? I went into the relative major, so it doesn't scare anybody. Sounds normal. And I sang the Lador Vador by Kalochnik, which was made famous by Moshe Kosovitsky. And there you go. That's known as a fusion. And I'm good at it. I'm gonna put together a book of various fusions.
We can tell you're really good at it. Not just that, we love you because you're doing stuff.
The thing at HUC they made it into a class that I teach with Alana Arian. You all know who Alana Arian is? She's the it. I would say, right, David? She's the it composer.
Yeah, right. In the Reform movement, absolutely. Right.
She is now, and she's quite wonderful. I say Yiddish Mädela. She's a wonderful, and she respects the Nusach and
incredible musician.
So in our class, it's an elective, but you can't get into the class. The kids love it so much. It's called improvisation integration. I teach them to improvise within the Kachko Nusach or the Alter Nusach that they learn at HUC. And then she and I do the integration. She'll integrate from Chazonis into a modern tune, and I'll integrate the modern tune back to Chazonis. And we do, sometimes she'll do both, I'll do both. And all day long we do fusions. And I do fusions with her music. I called her up. I said, tomorrow I'm going to do a fusion with your Ahava Rabbah. You're gonna let me do it? Is it okay? I don't want to upset you. She said, no, go for it, Jackie. And she liked it. And so, I do, like Take Havdalah. The Debbie Friedman tune it's become a tradition. You can't fight that tune. I mean, when I went to Poland, to Krakow, for the Jewish Music Festival some years ago, and Saturday night before the big concert on the square, 10,000 people, about 15 Jews, and we set all Jewish music, and they had that chief rabbi of Warsaw came with a big long whiteboard, and he's davening. He was here. He's shuckling with his white beard. I came back home. I told Debbie she peed in her pants, and it was you can't fight that tune, man. So I bring it in from Nusach. Yeshua sieb namen no yefchor. Yosef im lasse yo adoin vachilish. After my miso so mi meine ya adeit no yeshalom chavi chasecha. Adei no demani yakosela. Another dem de amani mena yanei no veyoim koreinu. Right from the Nusach, a nice, easy modulation into Debbie Friedman, and so that's the ticket. That's the key to doing it. If any one of you, if you need help with a fusion, I'll help you. I like to help.
Well, don't be surprised later in the fall when things will be a little bit easier. Travel will be easier. Don't be surprised if you see David and me in your class at any of these schools. Sitting there and just listening to you.
What's the COVID like over there?
We're getting there now. We're getting there.
Oh, it's better now?
It's better. People are getting second shots now, and in 3-4, we're starting to open up. In 3-4 weeks, we should really see a major difference.
Yeah.
So we have a family tradition. We go to Toronto every summer, my wife and I.
That's right. Can you share some good Toronto Chazanut stories or about some of our colleagues here? We'd love to hear some of those.
Any friends here in Toronto? Any?
Does a cat have hips? I mean, basically, we fight him call. We come to see Tommy and Leslie Schwartz. Because he was my schoolmate at HUC, and there's nobody like Tommy. Because he should be well. And of course, you guys, Benny, Simon Sparrow, I can't help myself. I'm in love with the guy. Call me irresponsible. I love my Simon. I love him. I love his shul. I love what he's doing there. And I kid him. I give him I tell him what I think. He said, what did he sing? He sang, oh yeah, he sang, he sang for Yisker. He used the theme from the movie. From the movie,
Schindler's List.
Schindler's List. Well, he must have done it over 70,000 times. By the 15th time, I said, Simon, don't you think it's enough already, for God's sake? But no, he keeps doing it over and over and over. It's one thing, to show the Jews you're doing Schindler's List, but you already showed them, So, but anyway, God bless him. I love him.
Let's share another piece of yours, Jackie, because I know they want to hear you sing.
They must hear me sing.
They must. I think the other one you asked me to how about the Uwe Yom? Is that a good one to share?
Oh, Uwe Yom is a little more closer. I was in my 60s there, but I still got it now, and
still sound amazing.
As long as I keep my mind on it, my vibrato still moves. Some of my colleagues, I won't let that happen to me. So that's just a question of energy. And here's the Suvyama Shabbos by Meir Machtenberg. And there's a solo in there, Oilas Shabbos b'Shabbatoi. Now in Shul, when they did that, they would have little alto boys would sing the solo over and over again. They would sound like this. Oilas Shabbos. Oilas Shabbos Shabbos b'Shabbatoi. Oilas Shabbos b'Shabbatoi. Oilas Shabbos b'Shabbatoi. Oilas Shabbos b'Shabbatoi. Next kid. Oilas Shabbos. So our conductor, so to speak, he couldn't even read music. His name was Ben Friedman. And he used to hit a lot. And if you did something, you sang something wrong, he'd hit you in the face. Nice. And then you never sang wrong after that because you knew what to do. And I think it was very useful. Anyway, there was this kid in the front. They had a nickname, Tushkula. He was very short. Shut up. I'll call you later. So this kid in the front, Tushkula, and when I was in the back and I used to cut up, I would make fun, but he couldn't reach me. He couldn't reach me to hit. 1 second. It's Danny.
He's calling now.
Danny, I'm on the phone with David Rosen and
Danny!
with the colleagues from Toronto. I'm giving them a bit of my personality here.
Oh, well, why do you always answer when?
I always answer because it was David Rosen. I want you to say hello.
Hi, Danny.
David Rosen. David Rosen. Love you, David.
Love you, Danny. Now, if you think Jackie can sing, you haven't heard Danny yet.
Hey, cut it out.
Who is and that's a whole other show. Danny, we need to bring you on for another show. Danny is a tremendous talent and succeeded me at Colamy in White Plains. And I would love, for those of you who haven't heard Danny yet, you need to hear Danny. So we'll leave it at that.
Honey, I'll call you back.
I'll talk to you later.
Bye, honey. So, what was I saying? The kid. So Tushkula in the front. So the guy was breaking up and he couldn't reach me, so he hit Tushkula because he was reachable. He was handy. So poor Tushkula got hit all the time because he couldn't reach the other kids. Don't look, all of you PC nicks.
It probably wouldn't fly today.
Relax. We all got hit. Everybody hit. My brother hit me. My sister hit my brother. My mother hit me. My father hit me. Look at me. I turned out great. Can't you tell? And it was a different world. It was a different world. And yeah, I got, what's his name? There was a kid, Menachem Tisser. And he was the worst. He would cut up. He did a terrible thing to the tenor. The tenor had a solo. It was three pages of music. So Tisser, when he wasn't looking, took out the second page. So the tenor is singing the solo. All of a sudden, he stopped singing. And I didn't know what the hell. He didn't know it by heart. It was terrible. So they found the choir director. His name was Ben Friedman. He found out that Tisser did it. So he threw a chair. He threw a chair at Tisser. Nebuch. He broke his arm. I went with them to the hospital. They put him in a cast, and they take him back home to his father's house. But his father, Sam Tisser, was the biggest macher in Temple Bethel. And so Benny Friedman knocked on the door, and the father answered. He was a very nervous Hungarian, and he looked at his son with the cast. And says, what happened? So Ben Friedman, the director, he was ashamed. He says, Sam, I'm so sorry. I lost my temper. Menachem did something and that he shouldn't have done. I lost my temper and I threw a chair. I'm so sorry. And Tisser looked at Menachem. He looked at Sam. He looked at me, and he said, "Good." That was the world in which I grew up in. The teacher was right, never the student.
Oy vey. All right. On that note, let's hear some Uvi
Yom HaShabbos.
All right, hold on 1 second. Let's get it up here. This is an audio track only.
It's the last time I sang a high B in public.
Oh wow! All right. There it is. Okay.
They're slaughtering kids.
Yom
Stop. Wow.
After
Wow.
that, they got a gurney and took me to the hospital.
Jackie, what? Who was the choir sing along with you there?
That's the Western Wind, the greatest a cappella vocal ensemble in America.
Beautiful.
It was
Beautiful.
augmented. They had the Western Wind consists of six, I believe, but they had about 16 top voices, and that the alto was a what do you call him, a countertenor.
Yeah.
We have a few incredible, really incredible. Thank you, Jackie. We have a couple minutes left. If anyone has any questions, please type them in the chat. And if we have a couple minutes, we can take a couple questions.
You want to go fast? I'm happy.
All right. Jackie, maybe you can say one word. You know, recently, for those of you, I don't know, did your show come to Toronto when it was?
No.
That's something we need to bring here is your one man show, which is just
fantastic. The Cantor's Couch.
The Cantor's Couch. We say maybe if you could say just a word about that, and also about the two documentaries that's been made, both the Cantor's Head and the Cantor's Tail. Maybe if you could say a few words about that.
David, you're forgetting about one of the most important things. He needs to talk about Delhi. Yeah, he's got a good lesson. Yeah, he's got to talk about some good food too.
I'll just give you one tip. Fatty corned beef, not lean. Lean has no taste. That's all you need to know. And as far as the Cantor's Couch is a one-man show, original music by the wonderful Jonathan Commissar, and the book is by Mark Beeler, a brilliant, happens to be a member of my shul, who put together a fantastic text. And Jonathan, and it's done with piano usually, and Jonathan comes out and plays, and with a there's some whatever you would call it. We have a stage with various accoutrements that we need, and two 45-minute segments, and it's me talking to my shrink, really about my life, and about chazanas, about saving chazanas. But it starts with my early days, how I encountered chazanut. The songs are magnificent. At one point, early going, the shrink is represented by just an empty chair that I'm talking to, and then eventually, I ask permission of my shrink. Her name is Anita. Is it okay if the audience could be my shrink? And then I just talk directly to the audience, and it's very close to the beginning. And one of the first things I do is I teach them to hum for a chazan. I teach them to hum at a cadence. When a chazan reaches a cadence, to hum, to give the chord, which is not a very hard thing to do, which is a wonderful thing to do, a device to use to get your congregation interested in chazanut. Because some of them might say, look, you do chazanut, so we can't sing. As if they, by the way, as if they have to sing every second of the service, as if they have to move their mouth every single second of the service. But that's another story. But they're, oh, I can't sing. So you teach them to hum, and the chazan does chazanas, and they hum, and they're participating. And and the show is, there's a dream sequence where I meet three of the greatest chazanim that ever lived: Pinchik, Moshe Eisher, Moshe Kosovitsky, and I sing a number by each of them, and it's all kinds of wonderful, wonderful things, and we've done about 30 of them all over the United States. We're ready to go to Canada.
Let's book it in for next year, David. What do you say?
Make it happen. Let's do it. We'll talk. We'll talk.
And then we have there was two documentaries, A Cantor's Tale in 2003, which you might have seen. It got notoriety, wonderful reviews in Variety, New York Times, so on and so forth. The Times called me what did they say about me? I think my mother wrote it, not the Times. It was like a voice that heralds a generation or something. It was crazy. And the director is named Eric Greenberg Anjou, very talented man, lover of chazanut, a lover of me, and just because he missed me, he decided to do a sequel, and that's cool. And the sequel is far more dramatic. The first one is lovely and for the most part happy-go-lucky, and and the second one, it's dark. Not all dark. Got all kinds of wonderful, happy moments of me teaching at Claes Canada, in the Laurentian Mountains and off Montreal, and which I did two summers, and all kinds of nice things, but also the things that are my dark. I'm a depressive. I've been so ever since I was 11, and it's my world sometimes is extremely dark. And we got permission from my shrink to do two sessions with my actual shrink, as long as they didn't show her. And after a minute or two, I didn't even know they were there, and I just opened up like I always do. And so it's pretty serious stuff. And my relationship with my mother, my bar mitzvah, which is a story unto itself, which is not exactly a very happy moment in my life. And but thank God, I'm here, and the movie is the new movie is making its way around on COVID. COVID, hit us in the belly. We had 4 live showings, and then COVID came. So we do virtual showing. We do virtual showings now, and someone will pick that up. Don't worry, that's another phone. And
Call from White Plains ME.
yes, geschossen werden.
Call
So,
from White Plains
so,
ME.
so, I don't know how to shut the damn thing off, or I would.
Jackie, where can we see this movie actually, or is it not yet available?
The thing is, it's
Hi, this message is for Jack Nicholson. My name is Kim, and I'm calling from.
okay. Schossen, Ives, my physician's associates. That's my whole life. I go from one to the other. As far as seeing the film is concerned, unfortunately, for political reasons, the Toronto Jewish Music Festival did not pick it up.
Film festival.
Film festival. Well, they showed the first one, and a new person came in to the helm, Asher Lo Yodas Yosef, and it was some reason they didn't pick it up. Shuls, you can get it. What you need to do is get in touch with the director. His name is Eric Anjou, and so it's Anjou, Anjou, at earthlink.net. Anjou, Anjou, at earthlink.net. And you could talk to him, and it's quite reasonable. And you could show the film to your chevra.
Okay.
We have 2 quick questions in the one is quicker than the other, it looks like, in the chat, and then we'll wrap up. Anne has asked, what is your opinion of the training of cantors nowadays? What do you think about that? Maybe you can answer that.
Well, both schools are doing well. I don't know about AJR because I'm not knowledgeable as to what they do. But JTS HUC, I'm on faculty at both. And they give them a beautiful rounded, for instance, HUC. It's of course, it's a reform institution, but they must learn Nusach. They must learn traditional Nusach, and they do so. They do so with the Birnbaum, Siddur, and Machzor, and Orthodox. And they give you a full grounding. You should be able to go to a conservative shul when you graduate HUC. Very few do, but some do. I did, and back in the day. And JTS was having some difficulties, but now they've rounded out the faculty. Joyce Rosenzweig now teaches there Yiddish and art songs, and the only problem with JTS is it's hard. They don't have many students, and they need to get more students if they're going to be viable. For HUC, they're coming out of the walls. HUC, they get 10, 12 in a semester. It's just amazing. The incoming year is going to be all women. I think it's 12. So guys out there, come on, procreate. A few men. We should have a couple men in there, if not for men's sake, for the sake of the choir. I mean, it's SATB. You got to have TB, for God's sake. But it's very enjoyable teaching. It's a high quality student body, and some of them come in with master's degrees already. 1 or 2 come in with a PhD, and it's like it's good. I mean, it was challenging in COVID to teach online, and but at HUC I only had coaching students. One-on-one is not difficult. I had 4 students a week, whereas JTS I had to do 2 full classes and 2 coaching students. The classes were hard because you got problems. What if there's one person, a class of 5, let's say one is very, very schwach, weak. How do you hold, do you hold up the class because of the one, all kinds of issues that you could deal with maybe better in person, But I got through it. It was all right. They learned their stuff. So the matzav is good.
Remember last March, I went to New York to JTS where I saw you. Last time, actually, I saw you in person. Um, and I walked into your class and you gave me a hug. And I mean, I gave you a hug and you pushed me away. You said, no, 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 I'm afraid because I'm not feeling 100%. And
Oh,
you remember that? You remember that part?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't
so
want you to catch anything.
I was on watch as well right after that. But anyway, I think I escaped it, thank God.
Right.
Um,
Well, actually, my wife and I caught COVID last March
yeah, that's one.
at the very beginning of things.
Yeah, that's when it was. Yeah.
I got it from a shul. I went to Queens to a shul where I served for 10 years, 76 to 86. And they were closing up shop, so they wanted me to sing at the final. They had a dinner, and my wife and I came and sang. And they sat us right next to the Torah reader, and he had the COVID, and we go. But it was very mild. Thank God, it was mild.
Thank God. Thank God.
The last question Marty Steinhaus has asked, Cantor Marty Steinhaus, who's on the call, who's a better Chazan, Jackie or Tommy Schwartz? He wants to know. This is his question.
Jackie and
Oh, Tommy.
Tommy's a
No.
good. Tamala. No, Tamala is he held his own in the conservative milieu. He did high holidays for years in Toronto and even before. Um, but he never would hold himself out to be a great Omid Kunstler, for Eastern European Azonis. But then again, I can't sing opera like Tommy. So, but Tommy is, he goes by the book. He doesn't improvise, and he interprets the kachko or the altar beautifully, done with a gorgeous voice. The main thing, he should be gesund.
Amen.
He's got me by 10 years. He's 85. I'm going to be 75. Tommy did some crazy things over the years. Crazy things. I'll finish with a story of my uncle Nehemiah. My uncle Nehemiah, we called him Nehemi. My father's brother. Nehemi was the cousin of Shara Shemai in Montreal for 35 years. Nehemiah was a funny guy, and he had a way of laughing. It consisted of a single snort. He would go, that's how he laughed. So, my first marriage, you shouldn't know from it. First, I was just a baby. I was 20 years old. It lasted 6 years, and we got divorced. Her nickname was Cookie. Everyone called her Cookie. About 5 years after the divorce, Hemi comes to visit, and he says, I guess he's making a joke. He says, so tell me, Jackie, how's Cookie? And then there's one other Hemi. He's driving with my father in the car, and it's very, very hot. My father had the window open. And my father is his older brother. So he didn't want to be insistent and rude to his older brother. But here he has a chazan with the window open and the draft is going on his neck. So he said to my father, so tell me, Louis, is the window correct? He didn't say close the window. He said, is the window correct? So I leave you with that story. Thank you very much. By the way, I do look like Elvis, don't I? Especially in that
A little bit, yeah.
Chilalael, the big hair. Yeah.
Jackie, we are tremendously blessed, as is the Jewish community at large, by your presence, by your pedagogy, by everything that you bring. It comes from your kishkas, from your heart and your soul, and we are all the beneficiaries of this. We love you and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And God willing, they say the borders are opening up next month or whatever, that we will have you in our Toronto community very soon, our Toronto Jewish community, doing singing and sharing your stories and all of that. It will be a wonderful, wonderful reunion.
Equally wonderful for me, and I wish it went on for another 2 hours. what you could please visit my Facebook page every Friday.
Yes.
Every Friday, I
We love that. We love that.
piece of Khazanis. So,
That's a beautiful series. Beautiful series. We really enjoy it.
I'm killing myself. I don't know what to do this Shabbos, but I have to do it today. So I'll figure it out. Yeah.
Great.
All right, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you.
My dear men and women, Hazanim of Toronto, I love you all. My parents always said, you Canadians are the nicest people. And it's true. There is a certain Ehrlichkeit that Canadians have. It's just a beautiful, beautiful demeanor that you all have. And you're all sweet people. I can't wait to come. Give Tommy a kiss and to see all you guys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.